Blog Talk Radio.
Trapper Boy is coming.
Yeah, like right about now, give a shout out to my main man, Trapper Boy. And as y'all know, he from Trap Town, USA, where if you ain't careful, you just might get blown away. Trap Town.
Trapper Boy is coming.
Coming to your town.
Coming to a town near you. The Trapper Boy Chronicles. Chronicles of Trap Town.
Trap Town.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Trapper Boy's Comic Consciousness. Today's episode, the origin of Professor Charles Xavier, also known as Professor X. Charles Francis Xavier was born the son of a nuclear researcher, Brian Xavier, and his wife, Sharon. Following her husband's accidental death, Sharon married Brian's colleague, Kurt Markle. Kane, Kurt's son of a previous marriage, came to live at the Xavier's Westchester mansion shortly thereafter. A cruel and spiteful boy, he bullied his new stepbrother. As punishment, his father secretly beat him, and the young Charles felt his siblings' pain firsthand thanks to the emergence of his mutant telepathic powers. Following their mother's death, a fire in the family home took Kurt's life, leaving the stepbrothers alone. By the time he graduated high school, Charles was completely bald as a side effect of his mutant nature. He entered Bard College in New York at the age of 16 and earned his bachelor's degree in biology within 2 years. He was then accepted into the graduate studies program at England's prestigious Oxford University, where he earned degrees in genetics and biophysics. There, Charles met and fell in love with a young Scotsman named Moira Kinross. Their passionate discussions on the subject of genetic mutation gave way to romance, and they planned to marry. Their only obstacle was Moira's former boyfriend, Joe McTaggart, a Lance Corporal in the Royal Marines, and a bully, just like Kane. In Joe's eyes, Charles was a good-for-nothing intellectual, so Charles enlisted in the military after completing his studies at Oxford to validate himself in terms of his rival would understand. Charles quickly became something of a legend in the area of search and rescue thanks to his mutant abilities. Attached to the same unit as his stepbrother, Charles was present when Kane deserted under fire during a mission in Asia. Following him, in the hope of convincing him to return to their unit, Charles witnessed Kane's discovery of the mystical ruby of Sidorak and his transformation into the superhuman Juggernaut. So a lot of people didn't know Juggernaut was his stepbrother. Charles escaped and the subsequent cave-in, mistakenly believing his stepbrother was dead. Charles was devastated when Moira broke off their engagement without explanation. He left the army and began traveling the world. In Cairo, Egypt, he encountered Amal Farouk, a mutant